In my previous video, I said I wasn't going to reply to this guy unless it gets a lot of views. However, screw it. I don't really care much about views anyway. I brought up the views because, making a video does take a little bit of effort, even when even when I'm barely doing any editing. But this take was just so bad, I just feel the need to express that in a video form instead of just, leaving a funny comment under his video, because the thing about YouTube comments is that they usually go ignored. At least with this video, there's a good chance that at least someone will find it. And yeah, this is probably the worst take I've ever heard on a Souls game ever.
To get there. Then Dark Souls 3, that's just straight a normie game. They took Dark Souls, which was interesting and unique, where the main mechanic was stamina management. Whether you're blocking or dodge rolling or attacking, you have to pay attention to your stamina bar, because if it ran out, you were fucked and you would take damage. Then we move over to Dark Souls 3, and it plays like every other action game ever made.
Alright, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. This has come from someone who likes Dark Souls 1 a lot more than Dark Souls 3. First of all, calling Dark Souls 3 a normie game? Not really. And even if it was a normie game, there's nothing wrong with that, But really, my biggest issue with him calling it a normie game is that I know lots of people, I was in the military, talked to a lot of gamers, talked to a lot of, just people in general, and not a single one of them ever talked about Dark Souls 3. Not a single one, including when I go out into the civilian world and talk to other people. Rarely anyone ever played Dark Souls 3, I mean, don't get me wrong, the game did sell well in the gaming sphere, but in the normie sphere, nah, not really. Because I can understand why, too. I mean, it's not really a game that's friendly for normies. It's challenging. People are going to be confused, like, wait, do I got to play Dark Souls 1 and 2 before starting 3? That kind of stuff. When I think of a normie game, I think of something like Call of Duty or Fortnite, Minecraft, something along those lines. And it plays like every other action game. Like, what does he mean by that? Like, yeah, it's an action adventure game, bro. Like, you gotta basically block, dodge, and attack. That's pretty much the fundamentals of action games. Like, what are you talking about? You're surprised that this action game plays like an action game? What's next? You're gonna be surprised that Bayonetta, God of War, and Devil May Cry essentially do the same things as well?
Dodge out of any attack. It's just a shitty action game. Before, you would be genuinely punished. If you mashed circle 3 times, you would roll 3 times in a row, no matter what you did, and you'd be out of stamina, fucked, take damage. Same thing with attacking. It was Dark Souls 3 that they changed their mind. They're like, normies cannot handle that. They're too dumb. So you just mash the attack button, and then you hit circle at the right time instead of the wrong time. And that's Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. They're brain-dead action games for people too fucking stupid to play Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. They can't.
Uh-oh, retard alert! Retard alert, class!
That's the first... I honestly can't believe I actually heard that opinion. That is the first time I've ever heard someone imply or say that Bayonetta and Devil May Cry require more skill than Dark Souls. Like, that's an asinine opinion in my opinion, because as someone who's played Devil May Cry and Bayonetta, those games are infinitely way easier than any Dark Souls games. And he's also complaining about how you can't monitor your stamina, or that you don't gotta monitor your stamina in Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. And I'm like, did we play the same game here? Like what's going on here? What is the logic in this person's head? Like, I don't really think he actually played these games. Now, it's perfectly fine to prefer Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, the faster paced games over the slower Dark Souls games. But saying Bayonetta and Devil May Cry are implying that they require more skill, it's just really stupid, especially with Devil May Cry 2, one of the easiest games ever. Devil May Cry 1, I mostly beat that by just, mashing the attack button because that game was more limited. Devil May Cry 3 is the most challenging Devil May Cry game, but even then, it's not as punishing as Dark Souls or Bloodborne. In those games, if you die once, you gotta go all the way back to the checkpoint where you last started off. And in something like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, those games are not only more normie friendly, but they're also a lot more lenient and less punishing too. I don't really think this person actually played these games.